At least 73 people have died after a fire engulfed a five-storey building in the Johannesburg CBD in the early hours of the morning. Gauteng MEC for Health and Wellness, Nomantu Nkomo-Ralehoko, is expected to visit those who were injured, who have since been admitted to Helen Joseph Hospital. At least 7 children are among those killed, while more than 43 others have been injured. Now, scores of distraught relatives have gathered at the scene, hoping to trace their loved ones. The exact cause of the blaze is still subject to investigation at this stage, but it is understood that the building was abandoned with an estimated 200 occupancy rate. Johannesburg Community Safety MMC Mgcina says the high death toll could have been prevented if the gates inside the building weren't locked. All right, now let's bring in SABC News reporter Nozintombi Miya for an update. Nozintombi, thank you so much for your time. Of course, you have been there for the best part of the morning. Just talk to us about what you found when you got to the scene.
Absolutely, Unati. It has been a long and heart-wrenching day here at the CBD. On Dalvers Street here, and the position I'm standing in just shows you the people that are standing behind me, and these are the people that some of them are residents, some of them knew the people that lived in this building, but we are going to walk now, Unati, we're going to walk now, and I'm just going to get my camera colleague Vanessa, go on that side please. I'm going to get my camera colleague Vanessa. Please guide her so she doesn't fall. We're moving a bit closer. And what you're seeing right now, this is what you're seeing now. This had been cordoned off and closed off by the police. All 73 bodies that were pulled out from the building yesterday had been lined up here. And we saw a number of forensics trucks make their way here, a huge forensic truck, and at least I think 4 or 5 smaller forensic trucks that were here, that were assisting. And this is literally the scene. You can actually see the charred remains here of the people who were removed from this building. So this is quite as close as we've been now. We're actually starting to see the reality of what happened. This is the building itself. You can see that it's burned from the back, it's burned from the front. And up here you can see some of the residents who were desperately trying to get out, had left a mattress there and were jumping from the top floors. And this is the grisly scene that emergency services came upon, as well as the police and the forensics. This is what they came to, the scene that they found here. And it has been a gut-wrenching morning, with emergency services desperately trying to move all the bodies. And the ash that you're seeing here, I'm going to ask Vanessa to just go on a closer up shot of the ash that you're seeing here. This ash is not just ash. This is literally ash that comes from the remains of the people that were burnt inside this building. Now, if that does not give you chills, Unati, I really don't know how else to express the extent of shock and horror. And the little plastic bag that's in front here, that is a plastic bag that still has some of the remains of the people here. We do know that from the family members that have been communicated with by officials and authorities, that they have asked the family members to come in at a later stage, either later today or from tomorrow, because the process that is going to happen now is that the forensics will then now do a DNA testing to try and identify identify the remains of the 73 people, to try and put a name to a face, so that they can then notify the families of those that had died. And, you can actually just see that, I'm going to ask Vanessa. Vanessa, can we just walk a little bit further? You can actually see that there's a building that's right opposite here. It's called Yard South, if she can just pan to the other side. And there are residents that are sitting there on the balcony. So you can just imagine, for the better part of the morning, a lot of the residents have been coming here, looking at the scene, helpless to do anything to assist any of the people that were here. And we are going to walk a little bit further down. I mean, you can see that this scene itself has been cleared out. But coming here, it shows you a better picture of the hijacked buildings. And what you can see here is some of the protection police. And you can see that there's an operation that is expected to start quite soon in going into these derelict buildings and removing people out. You can see right at the top there is a Nyaupe guy. And this is what we were saying earlier, that we tried to actually go into this building here, the building that my camera colleague is focusing on. We tried to go in. But the gentleman at the top there, and we understand that these are people who are on drugs or have issues, they literally threatened us and they refused to let us go onto that building. And police themselves were quite reluctant and quite scared to get us to go in there with us, to assist us to go in so that we can get better visuals of this. So, Nati, before we do wrap up, the situation here has been cleared. What's going to happen now is that the forensics and the police will now take stock, and investigations into the cause of the fire will really get underway. It's still unclear. There's been many stories that have been floating around since early this morning. We're waiting for the official word about what caused this fire here. But as it remains right here, right now, Unati, the scene is cleared, but the charred remains of those who lost their lives remain here on the streets of the inner city. Unati.
Well, absolutely shocking there, Nozintombi. Miya, thank you so much for that update. I can't even begin to tell you how shocked it is to see just some of those buildings. I thought, in fact, the last building that Nozintombi Miya showed us was, in fact, one of those that also was gutted, but evidently it is not. All right, for the latest development now, we go from Nozintombi Miya, we cross now to my other colleague, reporter Hasina Gori, who is also on the scene. Hasina, of course, we are hearing chilling details of what transpired in the past couple of hours, where 73 people have now lost their lives. More than 50 people, we understand, are still injured. Just talk to us about what do you have on your side. We understand, of course, that there is going to be another press conference or so this afternoon. Just give us the details in terms of what you know.
Good afternoon. We're once again coming to you from the inner city here in Johannesburg. We're from the early hours of the morning. Emergency services and rescue teams have been working on looking for those that may have still be inside this burning building that set alight in the early hours of this morning. From what we understand, the death toll is sitting at 73, with at least 40 people still in hospital, many for what has been described as minor injuries and smoke inhalation. The building behind us has been confirmed to be a hijacked building that belongs to the city of Johannesburg. We've heard from various different political parties, as well as NGOs and different officials from the government ministries, all speaking with regards to this incident and the impact it's had on the housing, as well as just highlighting some of the concerns that have been brought to light when it comes to the housing situation here in Johannesburg. But I want to bring in the Minister in the Presidency. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Minister. You spoke earlier and you just set out some of the issues that have brought to the disaster that we're seeing here today. Let's just start with what has led to us being here today. What could it have been stopped?
I must first extend our sincere condolences to the families and the loved ones of those who have perished in this fire. The numbers are just staggering for our country. We have not had such a large number of people perish in one go, and those for the speedy recovery to those who have injured. The situation of hijacked buildings, it's a phenomenon that government, both at national and province and the metro and the local municipalities, have been fighting since the longest of time. And I've indicated in my earlier brief that the Minister of Police was here just hardly 3 weeks ago to deal with some of these things, the hijacked buildings, illegal goods, sale of illegal goods. And when he was here, everybody vanished and the buildings looked empty and we couldn't find them. And it dealt with this issue of illegal immigration that the Minister of Home Affairs is trying to address, and through Cabinet, which we have done an amendment of the immigration laws so that we can tighten the immigration laws. Because if we tighten them, we can also tighten our ability to those who are illegal to go back to their own countries. Accept those who have to be in this country as refugees and be accepted to be hosted in our country. But second thing, the issue of hijacked buildings is not only about illegal immigration, it's also about people who come from rural provinces coming to the city or in sort of jobs and forever, whereas they have left their RDP houses which government would have provided, and we do not have another, you cannot qualify twice for government accommodation, and they get here. But also the challenge that whenever the cities and municipalities try to evict people in buildings like this one, the constant court challenges we are confronted with by when the residents or illegal occupiers are supported by this NGO sector. It has been a serious pain in all the government. You can see around you the program of the CBD renewal. It's already taking place. You can a camera view on the buildings. You see the student accommodation that is up on the other side, the investment by ups of 1 billion rands, over 1 billion rands with their head office in town. It gives you the ability to show that the city rejuvenation program is taking a course, but it's also derailed by this type of hijacking of buildings. And we are saying as government, we need to come together as a nation, as the individuals who find themselves residing here, to say you cannot resort to these inhumane conditions. They've just given me a walkabout around the building. There's a building which has shacks on top of the building. And what happens when there's an incident of fire? This whole building is barricaded, which is illegal, the barricading. So maybe if the barricading that is done here was not done the way it was, they would have been able to go out. Inside the halls, they have partitioned, they have done checks, and you could even see from the outside that it's difficult to move. That's the first conversation, that as an individual, you must refuse to subject yourself to this type of squalor. But secondly, across this building, there are adjacent neighbors. Before they're hijacking, it's up to us as a community to report, to say they're hijacking a building, they're doing illegal connections, they're doing all sorts of things, so that we can fight the crime and the squalor. This happens in our watch, because even when you say the police must respond, the police can only respond after it's reactive, but the communities, they're the first ones to ensure their own community safety. But we are saying, as we take measures to make sure that those who have lost lives are then linked up in terms of the DNA testing and all the testing that have to be done to their rightful families, so that they can be given decent burials. And those who we cannot find their families, government will have to do what has to be done necessarily in line with our cultures. But secondly, those who are injured, they've been sent for treatment. We wish them speedy recovery, and those who do not have shelter, later in the day, the city of Johannesburg and the Gauteng provincial government, they're going to announce measures of saying what do we do as a relief measure in the immediate, as we start to have a conversation about the future that needs all of us, the whole of society, the whole of South Africans, to say how rebuilding and protecting these countries is our collective responsibility. It's not the governing party, it's not the opposition parties, it's not government, it's all of us, it's civil society, it's the individual South Africans.
We've been hearing from various of these stakeholders, the previous administration, the current administration, throughout the state. There isn't an issue of not knowing what the problem is. And as you said, it's been identified as well. Why has there been such a slow implementation stage? And could this have been really curbed in some way if it had been speedily done?
It has not been slow. Remember, we have what we call a very noisy democracy in the country. For instance, earlier I mentioned the fact that we are amending the Immigration Act laws to tighten our ability to manage immigration, which will also assist us with that in terms of illegal immigrants in the country. That process on its own, you can ask the Minister of Home Affairs, it has taken years for us to get to a point wherein we've got a draft bill that has been ready to be submitted in Parliament for the Parliament to process it. and the implications. And I hope that when that bill is processed, people will remember what has happened today, and then will allow that immigration law to be amended to tighten and strengthen the ability of government to go and succeed. Because with the current laws, when we go to court, we always lose court cases in dealing with illegal immigration. We cannot deal with that. But the second conversation, which the other minister, the Minister of Human Settlements, is dealing with, is the ability to house those who move from the rural areas, having benefited from a government housing subsidy, as they move to the city in search of opportunities. How do they then get accommodated in that? Those are the conversations we are having, and those are the measures we are having. The Minister of Human Settlements will also make those announcements when she comes in to intervene. So it's because of our democracy and the nature of our democracy. You have to follow the whole process to the T. It takes you time, it's longer, it's protracted, but it ultimately gets here. If we have the ability to move faster, able to move faster. The President has requested us as cabinet, and will be considering in the next cabinet meeting, what are the constraints that make us not to move faster, including the laws that constrain us not to move faster. And those are part of the conversations we are already having at a cabinet level, to say, so that we can then make a huge intervention and improve. You have seen the number of general amendment laws that have been done to unlock certain things. Yesterday, the Minister of National Treasury or Finance has announced that they are removing certain regulations to allow the government to move with agility, and state-owned institutions to move with agility to address some of the challenges confronting us. But there is work in progress. But on some of these things, it's not a government responsibility, it's a societal issue, and we must have a conversation. It's an issue where a parent must know that they cannot go for a month without talking to their child. Because the parent cannot reside at home without knowing where your child is staying. A child cannot reside in their place without knowing where your family, where your parent or your family member is residing. That is a societal issue. It reflects a brokenness in our society, which we must work together collectively, so that when an incident happens to me, my mother, my siblings, my children must be able to say, okay, Khumbudzo was there. She might not have been there because it was not, this time she might not have been, but this is where she resides. It is unacceptable that a family member does not know where their family member resides. It's what kind of a society are we? And it's, for me, what I've seen and the numbers that have been, we need to have, as a South African, we need to come together and decide that we want to rebuild the society, we want to build this country, we need to work together in partnership, in support of a greater, a united, non-racial and prosperous South Africa for all.
Thank you so much, Minister, for speaking to us, and hopefully we'll have more of these conversations going forward, and this will not just be the only time we hear this. Hopefully in the future we can expand more on the housing issues, but also the immigration and these new acts that will come in. Thank you so much. I know you have a flight to attend to now. Thank you so much. That was the Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo, speaking to us here, just giving us some of the interventions of government that she claims is not just a response to this fire, but have been implemented and in place. The fire did take place in the early hours of the morning here in Johannesburg. The cause of this fire is not yet known. Investigations are still ongoing. We know that the EMS has handed over the scene now to the police, where the K9 units are going through the 5 floors from room to room to ensure that there is no mortal remains of anyone still inside that could be there, or anyone that may be still injured and still inside this building. What we know is that these buildings were just shells that have been added on with temporary structures such as cardboard and zinc to make housing, and these may be a reason for why the fire spread so rapidly. But I want to bring in the councillor for the area. You responded this morning to the incident. What was that scene like when you got here in the early hours of the morning?
I have never seen anything like that. It was like something seen from a movie. People jumping from the building, and some of the people that were rescued, the blood, you could see their skin was peeling off. And what concerned me the most was some of the guys that you could pick up that were foreign national. When we were referring them to the paramedics, they were running away. And our assumption was they probably did not have the documentation. I must really say, as South African, we need to start enforcing our laws. I mean, we've got laws in this country, particularly around the issue of immigration. We've got laws, bylaws. For example, this particular building, a year ago, I reported this to chiefs that people are getting marked inside the building. People are getting killed inside the building. I had a sector manager from the South African Police Service that confirmed as well that this building specifically is dangerous in this area. So the question that I posed to the local government is, I mean, because they said to us that it belongs to province and there's not much that can be done. There must be laws that we can, bypass to ensure that people don't go through what they went through. I mean, the rule of law must prevail.
There seems to be a conversation around who owned the building, who was it leased to, who abandoned it. Has nothing been done to ensure that these buildings are not hijacked and then, taken over by illegal landlords and then just rented out for money with no accountability?
Let me tell you this, there is just no